How's everybody doing? You guys okay? Second story. How's everybody hanging in there this morning? 3 of you are good. That's good. That's all right. I'm with you. I'm with you. Hey, you know what? For those of you who don't know me, my name is Seth. I am the pastor here at Second Story Church. I'm so grateful that you're joining us, whether you're in the room with us or whether you're watching us online on Sunday morning or at some point during the week. Today, we're launching into a brand new series, y'all. We got something brand new for you. And this is called The Separation of Church and Hate. The separation of church and hate. Really, for the next 6 weeks, what we're going to be up to is we're going to be talking about culture and Jesus and how the two of these things relate to each other, the conversations they kind of need to have with each other right about now, and how they do that in what is increasingly a post-Christian world. A post-Christian world. Guys, can I tell you a little bit about this series before we dive in? This series, some of the topics we're going to cover, starting next week, we're going to get in hot and heavy on this stuff. We're going to be talking about how Christians relate to politics. Hello. We're going to talk about that next week. We're going to talk about the power of words in an age when it's cool to be offended and outraged by everything. We're going to be talking about cancel culture. We're going to be talking about sharing your faith in a world that's hostile to your beliefs. And how do you do that? And why do you do that? And how is that like working itself out in your life? And then we're going to wrap it all up with a conversation with a message that's titled, and this is my favorite title of all of them. The title is, I'm Out of Cheeks, the Art of Forgiveness. It's going to be fun. We're going to have a good time in the middle of all this. We're talking about how do you still disagree with people and love them? How do you love people and still disagree with them? Like, how do you have conversations that are hard with people? This really is a series that's best when it's shared. We are going to be opening up the Bible and letting Scripture speak into a lot of really important topics in our world today in a way that is bold, it is direct. And my promise to you throughout this series, okay, is that I'm not going to either pull punches or duck punches in the middle of this series. Okay, we're going to be kind of out there with it. I'm going to speak as directly as I can from the Scriptures, but that doesn't mean that the answers that we're going to find together are necessarily the answers that you might expect to find together. Okay, I always tell my 7th graders in my classroom, don't anticipate me. You don't know where I'm going with this, okay? So listen, I just want to encourage you. Invite everybody. If you're online, like it, share it, get it out there. Let's do this thing for the next 6 weeks and let's have this conversation. Can we do that? All right. We're going to kick it off today with Daniel chapter 3. And for some of us, this is a familiar story. For some of us, it might not be. But this is the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. How many of you knew that the name is pronounced Abednego? How many of you knew that? I just learned that this week. I've been reading the Bible my whole life. Try changing that after 48 years of living, okay? It's hard. It's not a Bendigo, it's a Abednego. Anyway, let's dive in. Daniel chapter 3 says this. King Nebuchadnezzar made a gold statue 90 feet tall and 9 feet wide, and he set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Then he sent messages to the high officers, officials, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the provincial officers to come to the dedication of the statue he had set up. So all these officials came out and stood before the statue King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then a herald shouted out, "People of all races and nations and languages, listen to the king's command. When you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipes, and any other musical instruments, bow to the ground and worship King Nebuchadnezzar's gold statue. Anyone who refuses to obey will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace." It's kind of a funny thing that you've got this all-inclusive, like, let's invite everybody to this. Let's just get all the nations and the people and the different ethnicities, let's get them all involved, and everybody do this or you're going to burn. Okay? So ultimate inclusivity boils down to serious exclusivity. Kind of interesting. Okay? We're going to come back to that. What happens next, and I'm going to summarize a little bit because we're going to skip down to the end of this story, but what happens next is there are 3 guys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, okay, who are refusing to bow down to the king's statue. And the reason the king finds out about it is because there's some astrologers in the nation who go out and tattletale on them. You know, king, there's these guys. You're not going to like them very much. They're not bowing to your statue. Okay, that's what's going on. And what we find out in this whole thing is that these astrologers who did this may have had a little bit of an agenda themselves. But we're going to pick the story back up in verse 13. It says, then Nebuchadnezzar flew into a rage. A rage. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied, O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you. If we're thrown into the blazing furnace, the God whom we serve is able to save us. He will rescue us from your power, your majesty. But even if he doesn't, we want to make it clear to you, your majesty, that we'll never serve your gods or worship the gold statue you've set up. So they tied them up and threw them into the furnace, fully dressed in their pants, turbans, robes, and other garments, like case clothes, right? That's all we need. We're going to the furnace with you. And because the king, in his anger, had demanded such a hot fire in the furnace, the flames killed the soldiers as they threw the three men in. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, securely tied, fell into the roaring flames. But suddenly Nebuchadnezzar jumped up in amazement and exclaimed to his advisors, didn't we tie up three men and throw them into the furnace? Yes, your majesty, we certainly did, they replied. Look, Nebuchadnezzar shouted, I see four men, unbound, walking around in the fire unharmed, and the fourth looks like a god. Then Nebuchadnezzar came as close as he could to the door of the flaming furnace and shouted, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out, come here. What have you done to my furnace, you people? So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego stepped out of the fire. Then the high officers, officials, governors, and advisors crowded around them and saw that the fire had not touched them. Not a hair on their heads was singed, and their clothing was not scorched. They didn't even smell like smoke. Then Nebuchadnezzar said, praise to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He sent his angel to rescue his servants who trusted him. They defied the king's command and were willing to die rather than serve or worship any god except their own God. My message title for today, as we kick off this new series, is Haters. Haters. We're going to talk a little bit about what to bow to and what not to in a world where it's increasingly hostile to Christian faith. Would you pray with me? Jesus, thank you for the opportunity to open up your word and see examples of faith, of people like this. And it's just amazing to us, not only what we can learn from them, but kind of the hope that they were hanging on to that we can see modeled for us. So as we open up the scriptures today from the book of Daniel and we kind of examine this story, would you give us insight not only into our culture and into how to have conversations with people and all that kind of stuff, but would you also, Jesus, speak into our lives, maybe in some areas that we've been bowing down to the wrong things? And help us to know that you're with us and always inviting us back. In Jesus' name, all God's kids said, amen. Amen. Well, as many of you know, I teach 7th grade when I'm not here at Second Story. And this past year, I happened to find myself in a staff meeting on the Monday after Easter Sunday. That was this past spring. And now you got to remember, this is at a time when all of school, all of learning was happening via distance. And it was happening online and was all virtual. And because of the pandemic, nobody was really meeting in person for anything as of yet. So our school was trying to encourage like personal connections with people. And so before we all had a giant staff meeting in which we were going to be indoctrinated with things like critical race theory, which, by the way, we are going to butt up against in this series, okay? Yeah, I told you it was going to get real up in here in the next few weeks, okay? So, but before that all happened, they wanted to just kind of make sure that, you know, everybody has a chance to connect and feel comfortable with each other and all that kind of stuff. So to make us more comfortable in the conversation, they put us in these breakout groups into these virtual rooms where you had a small group of people of like 5 people that you could relate to, and you had to do some icebreakers. And if you know me well, you know that I Come on, I love Jesus, but I hate icebreakers. They're the worst thing of all. I'm introverted. I don't like these things. It just makes me cringe. But you have to do it when you're in these groups. One of the questions we just had to answer with each other is, hey, what'd you do this last weekend? What's something interesting or fun or even just eventful that you were up to? And most people, not all, but a lot of people in our school know that I'm a pastor outside of school, and it's not something I hide. It's not something I keep a big secret. So I shared with people, this past weekend was Easter weekend, and it was kind of a big deal in our church, and we had a lot of fun, and it was this great worship and celebration. I didn't go into a lot of detail about it, and I wasn't trying to be like up in your face with my faith or anything like that. But you're asking me what I did this weekend. It's Easter. I'm a pastor. This is what we do. Okay, so I shared about it. The next person whose turn it was to share, honestly, I don't even know if she answered the question, because for the next 10 minutes, in front of about 5 other teachers and colleagues in the school, this woman went on an absolute tirade about Christians, Christianity, the church, just all of it. I'm pretty sure it's a tirade that's like still floating in space over the city of Anoka, like where I teach. It's just out there. It was all about how Christians are hypocrites and they're everything that's wrong with our culture and our society. And she's sick and tired of like how Christians act and Christianity acts like it's the only game in town, and how hurtful that is and how arrogant Christians are. And she just doesn't like the way the church does what they do. And don't people understand what a sham it all is? She went off like crazy town. She wasn't like making a few comments here and there. She like came out swinging, big old haymakers. She never said my name in her attacks, but as the person who had just shared before her, I wonder what brought this on, you know? I gotta tell you, it was so uncomfortable and it was so ostracizing. It had me feeling so isolated from the rest of my colleagues. And listen, virtual meeting or not, I could physically feel everybody's eyeballs staring at my little like computer screen square that was going on, and all of them wondering the same thing. Oh my gosh, how is he going to respond to this? You know, and honestly, guys, in that moment, I was confronted with something that I have sort of felt coming. I think a lot of people have felt this coming on for some time as followers of Jesus. It's a movement that's been accelerated, maybe a little bit inflamed by the pandemic, but the heart of it and the root of it has been there for some time. It was one of the first times I had been confronted with this in a really overt way. Church, we have a problem. We have a big problem. We live in a culture that is more and more not just a post-Christian society in terms of our values or the things we do, or although it's definitely that. We live in a culture in America that more and more and more is openly hostile to Christians and Christianity than it ever has been. Whether we want to be or not, whether we like it or not, we are lumped in with the cultural establishment, and we live in a day and age where it's very cool to be anti-establishment. Now listen, you don't have to believe these things, okay? Maybe you haven't experienced it in the same way I have. I'm just telling you, this has been my experience. But as a result, this is something I've felt, and I don't think that I'm alone in this. It's getting harder and harder in America to publicly be a Christian outside of church. It really is. Some people have described this dynamic with an actual term that's begun to pop up in the last few years called being Christophobic. That we have a society that is Christophobic. We live in a day and age where people haven't just moved on from Christianity, but that the culture we live in, that it's interesting how it claims to value tolerance above all else, tends to openly have major objections to Christianity. And as we begin this series about like the separation of church and hate, one of the things that I would tell you is that, listen, if that's you, If you're one of these people who has a difficult time with the church or really serious objections to Christianity, can I just tell you that there are parts of your critique of Christianity that are accurate and that we honestly stand guilty of. We're not perfect, and we're not going to be perfect. And I also understand that for a lot of people, guys, for a lot of people, those feelings come out of a very deep place of hurt. Whether it's woundedness in the church or woundedness from another Christian or things like that. And if that's you, can I just tell you that my hope and my deepest prayer for this whole series is that you will enter into this conversation with me over these next 6 weeks, just bringing all those honest and raw feelings that you have, because those feelings come from somewhere, and I want to acknowledge that, and I want to be sensitive to that, and I want to work through that with you. I'm not here to try to convert you to a religion. I'm here to try to introduce you to the person of Jesus, okay? That's what I'm trying to do here. But let me tell you, if you're coming to this from inside the church, okay? And for a lot of us, it's just inside the church. And you're like, Pastor Seth, I have those feelings too. Like, it's really hard to be a follower of Jesus outside of the church. Then we're going to start this thing right here, right now, today, with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, because the question I want to wrestle with for just a few minutes this morning, okay? And believe me, I know my time is short here. I'm trying to spread everything I want to say over the 6 weeks, but like, I get a little fired up. I didn't need a lot of coffee this morning, okay? So I'm just saying, I know my time is short, but if this is the world we live in now, then the big question for us is, how do we deal with all these people who've been drinking all the haterade? You know what I mean? How do we deal with all the hate? What can we learn from Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego about this? Can we begin having this conversation together, people? Is that all right with you? Because this is something we got to be open and honest with. I don't think I'm alone in feeling this way, and I don't think that it's something that, I'm alone in experiencing, where, all of us have had moments where it's uncomfortable to kind of tell people what our faith is and what it's all about. Who or what are we going to bow to when the hostility and the hate get piled on? Let's talk about it. In this text, I want to pull out 4 quick things to talk about, 3 of which are things we don't bow to, 1 of which is. The first thing that we don't bow to is this. We don't bow to cancellation. And by the way, cancel culture isn't new. Did you know that? That that's not a new thing? Did you think that we invented that? Some people do. They're like, we're so woke, we invented cancel culture. No, you didn't. There's nothing, it's not that new. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego remind us right off the top of their story. It's so funny that, hey, all of you people reading about all of us in 2021, you think it's hard to get canceled and be a God follower for you in 2021? I got thrown into a freaking furnace, okay? So if you're worried that, you got yelled at in a staff meeting, ooh, I'm so sorry. Right? They're getting thrown into a furnace. This is not new. It's been going on for a really, really long time. It's so interesting. In verse 13, when Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego wouldn't bow to the pressure either from government or from their culture, because they're not the same, okay? They wouldn't bow to either the pressure from government or their culture to bow down in worship in front of the values, systems, and idols that everybody else is bowing down to. The king says, do you remember what his emotion was? He was enraged. He was enraged. Anybody in 2021 seen a little bit of rage coming out? Anytime? Right? Issues of government, race, education, finance, politics, government shutdowns, vaccinations. Oh my gosh, vaccinations. Just saying the word, people are in the comments are like, all kinds of stuff is flying out, right? How's everybody doing with this stuff? Everybody calm, cool, and collected? Right? No. Nobody is calm, cool, and collected. The king got enraged when they wouldn't bow down to what he and everybody else wanted them to bow down to. And listen, I already know what some of you are thinking right now, maybe even typing it in the comments like, I knew it, Pastor Seth's right-wing agenda is coming out. I can see it. It's all happening. And some people are like, that's right, we can tell, right-wing all the way. I mean, it's so funny to me. Listen, I have friends who are Democrats who think that I vote Democrat, and I have friends who are Republicans that think I vote Republican. In fact, it's kind of funny to me that both of them just assume they know how I vote because I'm friends with them. It's kind of a funny thing. The only two things I would tell you that these two sides have in common anymore, and we're going to talk about this more next week, is the same thing Nebuchadnezzar had, that being enraged that people aren't bowing to our agenda is how we need to respond to each other. That's the only thing these two sides have in common anymore. Yes, it's true. Christianity is facing an increasing number of haters in our culture. So how are we going to react to the rage? Did you catch what they did? What Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego said that they did? They got on Facebook and they had a rant. Remember that part? Yeah. They got a petition going. Remember that? They changed their profile picture to have an American flag. Like, is that what they did? They got together and started chanting, "Impeach King Nebuchadnezzar. We're going to march on the castle. It's going to be amazing. King Nebi the nebulizer. We hate him." No. What did they say? Verse 16. We don't need to defend ourselves to you. We don't need to defend ourselves before you. So, when my colleague, who is hostile towards Christianity in the church, when she goes on the attack with me, what's the first move I need to make? And what's the first thing I need to make sure that I'm not bowing down to? Don't get defensive. I can't bow down. Don't take it personally. I mean, listen, you got to understand, she's not mad at me. She's mad at the church. And my guess is, I don't know this, but my guess is there may very well be a story behind the hurt that her feelings are expressing. And if I want to get to a place where I'm able or at all, like in a trust circle with her, to be able to have a conversation with her about that, then I can't see every little thing that she or everybody else is doing as a place to plant my Jesus flag in the ground and become a headhunter for Jesus in defense of the faith. I can't look at it like that. We are so bad at picking our fights in the church. Have you noticed that? We're so bad at this. When you're confronted with rage, okay? You're confronted with rage. I don't care if it's something you saw on the news. I don't care if it's something that happened in a personal relationship that you've got going on, maybe between a husband or a wife or whatever. What does anger tell you about somebody? What does rage tell you? It tells you that there's hurt, okay? It tells you that they're hurt. Haters are often hurters, okay? The bigger the rage, oftentimes the deeper the hurt. See, I don't think that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were telling the king just arrogantly, like up in his face, like all over the place, like, "Hey man, we don't answer to you. We're not bowing down to you. You're not the boss of me. I believe in America and Jesus and blah, 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 blah." I don't think that's what's going on here. They were telling him from a place of internal security in themselves that, hey, I don't need to defend myself. I don't need to defend Jesus. They weren't bowing to the rage, and they weren't bowing to the cancel culture. Because the other side of it is they never came out and said, like, "You know what, Nebuchadnezzar's kind of right. We need to like rethink some things about how to be a good neighbor with everybody. We really do. We should just bow down." They didn't do that either. But what they're doing is they're seeing beneath the issue to the real issue, and that's the hurt. In any relationship, guys, if I respond to someone's rage with defensiveness, how's that going to go? Probably not real well, right? Here's what I want you to get from this. Did they bow down to the culture and to the statue and the clearly stupid edict from the king? Did they bow down to it? No, they didn't. But they were secure enough in their faith that they're able to live out their faith in such a way that I don't have to get all hostile, weird, and defensive with everybody either. There's a difference. It's a fine line, guys. It's a fine line. I knew when I came back to that small group in my school later that day that everybody's going to be watching me to see if I get defensive. They're going to be watching for that. So I chose not to. That doesn't mean I wasn't feeling a certain kind of way, okay? It just means that I chose to push that to one side and respond out of something else. That's what it means, okay? It means that there's a hurt behind the rage. Anger is always, always, always a secondary emotion. Anger always has a because. Did you know that? I'm angry because I'm embarrassed. I'm angry because I'm hurt. I'm angry because I feel devalued. I'm angry because I'm scared. Whatever it is. So the best thing I can do in that situation is listen for the hurt behind the anger. Don't bow to being canceled. You're still entitled to your opinion, but don't bow to your own defensiveness either. That's a fine line. And it's important that I not only do that, but that my other colleagues see me doing that. I have to remind myself, listen, breathe deep. I'm okay. It's going to be all right. It's okay to love Jesus. It's okay to like Easter and be excited about the weekend you had. Okay, it's going to be okay. I love church, and I can be confident in those things. It's okay to be firm in what I believe and defend what needs defending and work through with people what needs to be worked through, but not be defensive about it. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? That's a hard line to walk. We're going to come back to this idea over and over again in this series. Cancel culture, guys, it's not new. We don't bow to the rage of people, but we also don't bow to the rage that we want to return. Okay? You can't cancel me, I cancel you. We're not going to do that. Okay? And that leads me to number 2. We don't bow to cultural norms and pressures. We're not bow to cultural norms and pressures. I think it's so interesting that the king wasn't the only one enraged by these guys not bowing to the statue. It was the astrologers who were the tattletales in the situation, okay? They're the cultural police. They're the whistleblowers. They're the ones on Facebook, like, have you seen what they're doing? They're the ones that are calling everybody out. The king didn't even know about it until they told him all about what was going on with these 3 guys. Again, does any of this sound familiar to what we're going through today? There was tremendous cultural pressure on Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the whole nation. Think about this. In the whole nation, they're the only 3 dudes singled out by name. You, and you. You symbolize all these people, off to the furnace with you. That's a lot of pressure to be under, but they're being smart about this. They're not defensive. They're not antagonistic, but they're also not doing things just because everybody's doing them either. Where I'm going with this? Just because everybody else believes a certain way about a certain set of cultural rules about anything. Listen, money, worship, health, sex, lifestyle, whatever. That's not what informed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego about how they were going to live their life. That came from their faith. We cannot live in fear about practicing our faith in the face of the cultural police, cultural norms, or cultural expectations of other people. So even if my friends are out drinking too much, I don't have to bow to that. Even if I'm getting pressure at work to think or practice something a certain way, I don't have to bow to that. If I'm getting pressured in a relationship about gender or sex, I don't have to bow to that. Even if I'm getting pressure to adopt a certain number of values and live them out with my friends because then they'll accept me more, I don't have to bow to that. And I can use my words to lovingly express how I'm not doing that. Listen, living smart doesn't mean living silent, okay? Living smart doesn't mean living silent. Jesus said you got to be as wise as a serpent, but as innocent as a dove. Anybody here super good at that? Right? That's really hard to do. Listen to what Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego said to the king. I love this. They said that, listen, this is what we believe, and this is why we do what we do. So here's what we're going to tell you, king. You can throw us into the furnace if you want to, because we believe that God is going to save us from it. But then they said this, verse 18, but even if he doesn't, we want to make it clear to you, your majesty, we'll never serve the gods or worship the gold statue that you've set up. Church, we need to develop a kind of, but even if he doesn't sort of faith. You got to have that. We've got to have that, even if he doesn't. Even if God doesn't save me. Even if God doesn't heal me. Even if it doesn't look exactly the way I wanted it to, it doesn't change the fact that I remain convinced and convicted that he is still God and I am still not. That's where it leaves us. It means that I'm not going to be converted to the new cultural religion based on the outcome of my personal situation. I'm not going to be convinced to embrace the popular value system just because everybody else is doing it. I'm not abandoning because a coworker is coming at me or a relationship is putting pressure on me. I'm going to remain a critical thinker. I'm going to pray in the face of incredible adversity. I'm going to put my faith into practice in my life and live this stuff out, trusting that God is going to save me. But even if he doesn't, I'm going to trust that his ways are not my ways and his thoughts are not my thoughts and that his plans and purposes are higher than my own. And I'm not going to bow or worship at the altar of another God because it's popular, or you might reject me and ostracize me and make me feel small. I have an even if he doesn't kind of faith. And it's bigger than me. And it's bigger than the rage. And it's bigger than the hurt. And it's bigger than the shade that's being thrown at the faith. And I'm strong enough and I'm rooted enough in that faith to live it out even when it's hard and even when I'm under attack. Are you feeling me on this, church? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego said, listen, even if he doesn't, say it to your neighbor. I mean, we need to say it to our neighbor. Go ahead, just say it to each other, even if he doesn't. I will not bow to cultural norms or patterns. And I'll be reminded that the scriptures tell me to not be conformed to the pattern of this world because the pattern of this world is a story that leads to death. In every way, death of people, death of relationships, death of love, death emotionally, death spiritually, and death physically. Listen, here's the secret. You want to know the secret? The pattern isn't working for the world either. And it's not going to work for you as you conform to it. So why do you want to bow to it? Why do you want to bow to something that isn't going to deliver you and you know it? Which leads me to the third thing that we don't bow to is that we don't bow to the flames. We don't bow to the flames. And by that I mean the fears and anxieties that are killing the people around us. The fire that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were thrown into, it was so hot that the Bible tells us that even the people who threw them into the fire were consumed by it. Like, it's so hot that even to get near it caused the guards to instantly be killed. People couldn't even be near this fire without it consuming them and taking their life. It's no different today. People today, church, even haters of the church and even haters of Christianity, I want to tell you something. They're burning up with all kinds of stuff. It's a furnace that's killing them. It's killing all of us. It's killing our relationships. It's killing our ability to have conversations with each other. It's killing our ability to relate to each other. It's killing our ability to find commonality with people, even though commonality with people is the thing we say we value. Just like the people in King Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom, we want to summon all the people, but all of our inclusivity boils down to a serious exclusivity. It's killing all our relationships. Anxiety and depression are off the charts right now. Therapists and counselors would tell you that they are absolutely overwhelmed with work. I mean, it's everywhere. People may be drinking the haterade about Christianity and the church, but that doesn't mean that they've found the answer of how to survive in the furnace. It's important to remember that. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they weren't consumed by the flames. They didn't bow to them. Does that mean that they didn't see what happened to the guards? No, they saw it. They saw it. They've been seeing it all around them culturally. But what it does mean is that they didn't bow to the heat of the flames, and that what took the lives of others didn't take over them, either in their thought process, in their bodies, their hearts, or their minds, because of who was in there with them. Even Nebuchadnezzar saw that. He looked into the furnace from the window. Which, I mean, how sick is that you've got a window into the people burner? Right? No, seriously, that's messed up. Even Nebuchadnezzar's looking in, and He didn't see 3 people burning up with the flames that overran everybody else. How many figures did he see, church? 4. And the 4th looked like a god. And even a man who built a 90-foot tall, 9-foot wide statue could see that. And that sight is what caused Nebuchadnezzar to develop a faith. When you bow to what everyone else is bowing to, you're going to be consumed by what everyone else is getting consumed by. So you bow to money, you're going to get consumed by greed. You bow to sex, you're going to get consumed by emptiness. You bow to substance, you're going to get consumed with addiction. You bow to anger and to rage, you're going to get consumed with canceling everybody. Okay? You bow to hurt, you're going to get consumed with grief. I am not saying that these emotions and these problems and these temptations are not real. I'm simply saying that you do not have to burn up in the flames of them without Jesus. That's what's going to reach this world, family. That's what's going to reach this world. It isn't your defensiveness. It isn't your posturing. What's going to reach this world is the evidence of the one who's in the flames with you. And I'm not saying you're not going to feel the heat. I'm saying that we believe and we live as though we have someone in the flames with us who can rescue us from them. And the only way that this world is going to get converted, I'm telling you, in this culture, the only way we're going to reach people is through an evidential kind of faith. It's got to be evidence-based. They will need to look into the window of your life and be confronted by the picture that they're seeing in front of them, that their flames are the same as mine, the heat is the same as what I'm facing, but for some reason, where I'm getting burned up and I'm dying, they're not. They're going to need to see that. So when you aren't burning up and when everybody else is burning up about the same stuff that you're going through, people, I'm telling you, they're going to want to know why. It's because in my anxiety, Jesus is my calm. And it's because in my depression, he is my light. Why are you downcast, O my soul? And though I may grieve, I do not do that as one who has no hope. And in my anger, he's walking the waves of the storm with me. You live it, you live it, you live it. You walk it out day by day by day by day. You stay steady. You fix your eyes on him, and you keep walking. And that leads me to number 4. The one thing you do bow to is Jesus. He's the only one who can save. People could never figure Jesus out, man. They never could. Jesus always had people wanting him to bow to them. From the devil at the beginning of his ministry, bow down to me, remember that? All the way through his ministry, all the way to the religious leaders, all the way to Caesar and to Rome and Pilate. The Gospels are the story of people wanting Jesus to be bothered by what they're bothered by, and bowing to what they're bowing to, and worried about what they're worried about, and subject to the things that they're subject to. They wanted him to cancel all the people that they wanted canceled and throw out all the people that they wanted thrown out. And he never did it. He never did. And by the way, that's why they killed him. Because when you're not subject to what the rest of the world is subject to, and it's perceived as something that is not going to cause you to waver or stretch or change, then people will either embrace it or be threatened by it. King Nebuchadnezzar embraced it. In fact, he was amazed by it. And all Jesus did, his whole ministry, was just invite people into that kind of living. Into living that kind of rooted way. In fact, when Jesus made the most profound impact with people, it was usually when they would come to him and they'd be all upset about something, and Jesus, you need to do this, and Jesus, you need to help me with that, and Jesus, I have a problem with this. And he would like get right down underneath all of that to the hurt beneath the hurt beneath the hurt. And he'd be like, yeah, the reason you're struggling with that is this and this and this and this. And people would walk away from him like, whoa. who is this guy? He's told me everything I did. He's told me everything I experienced. He healed me from something people didn't even know that I was going through. Jesus invites people into this. Like, listen, you can live this kind of way too. Jesus actually said once, he said, give unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, and give to God that which is God's. I wonder if, as he was saying that phrase to the crowds that were following him, if in his own mind he was thinking back to the furnace that he was in with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and how badly he just wants people to know, I'm the only one that can save you from this. I'm the only one that can get you out of this. All the rage, all the competition of who and what about, I'm the only one. I've always been, even back then and before then and going forward into all of time, I'm the only one who can save. The Bible reminds us that one day every knee will bow, every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. It's not a threat, it's the truth. That's what he's trying to get across to people. You can live in that now. I've always been the only one that can save. For me, I mean, what I want that friend of mine from work to know, I don't want her to know that she's wrong and I'm right. I want her to know that she seems hurt. And there's someone that can stand with her in the fire that is burning her alive. I'm telling you right now, church, she does not need my defensiveness or anybody else's. She also doesn't need me to be so soft on my faith that I back off of it. Right? Oh, you're right. Maybe I should just go away and tell my Easter stories among my church people. She doesn't need that either. She needs you believing what you believe in a way that Jesus lived it out, that speaks to the hurt beneath the hurt, because haters tend to be hurters. And they hurt people because they themselves are hurting. So what if I saw my haters this coming week for their hurt? What could change in my relationships if I actually took the moments that I'm offended to do what Jesus said and pray for our enemies? See their hurt. It doesn't just change them, guys, it changes you. It changes us. It changes us from a people who want to respond to our defensiveness and like bow down to that and get all in people's face and go on Facebook and get all crazy and like get arguments and all that. It changes us from that into, my God, you seem to be wrestling with something, and I think I know someone who can help you because I've been through some stuff in my life and the flames nearly consumed me. And I'm not telling you I want to invite you into like some kind of ritual. I just am trying to introduce you to the one who's going to take the binds off your hands and off your feet, and he's going to keep you safe in the flames, and he's going to deliver you out of them. I know that because he delivered me. I promise you, the people in the small group of your life are watching the way you respond to those people. So what if you responded how Jesus did? And you make the decision that it's a hard thing to do, but I'm going to walk the line of I know who I am, and I know whose I am, and I know I'm secure enough that I can help you get to that hurt beneath the hurt beneath the hate. Some of us today may be coming here from a place where we have never made the decision to bow a knee to Jesus. And in a minute, I'm going to give you just an opportunity to do that. Others of us come from a different place, and that is a place where we've maybe bowed to the wrong things. That we might be guilty of bowing to our defensiveness. We might bow to cultural norms more than we should around a lot of issues. There's a reason that lifestyle-wise, we don't see a lot of difference between what's in the church and what's out of the church. Maybe we're bowing to our own pain or our own anxiety in ways that it's just consuming us as a fire that's burning us up. And it's time for us to invite Jesus into that fire and say, God, would you quench those flames that are all around me? So I want everybody, all of us, to just go ahead, and we're going to close out in prayer. And I want you to come before God on this morning, and if you've never made the decision to bow a knee before Jesus, I just want you to know that he stands ready to enter into the flames with you in a way that is personal and meaningful and that's healing. And I promise you, it is not full of empty promises or a bunch of religious rhetoric. It is promise. The promise that it's based on is that I love you. That's really it. And I just want you to know you're not alone. If that's you this morning, I want to invite you to, just in your heart, go ahead and say this prayer with me. Jesus, this morning I'm bowing my knee before you. Would you enter into the flames with me and save me from everything that's consuming me? Be the Lord and Savior of my life, and let other people see the fruit of my life, that they might be saved as well. And I pray all of these things in Jesus' name. And if you are in the church, and maybe you have been bowing your knee to the wrong thing, would you just kind of do a little bit of heart check around this morning? Where have you been maybe a little too defensive? Maybe a little not confident enough? Where do you need to be shored up in your security of your faith so that other people are able to see the evidence of your faith and that you're not getting consumed with what's around you, not just so that you can be saved, but so that others can through you as well? Would you pray with me? Jesus, we confess that all too often we bow to the wrong things, that our insecurity gets the best of us, that our depression kind of pushes us around, that our anxiety is oftentimes bossing us into things that we don't want to be bossed into, and yet it happens every single week. We pray that you give us strength to not just live a certain lifestyle, but to walk in a certain relationship with you, and to understand that you have a certain position in our lives, and that because of that, we can walk confident, and we can walk with clarity, and we can walk with purpose, and we can walk with security, knowing that no matter what kind of haterade gets poured on us, in the middle of that, we can have confidence and hope and peace and joy, and we can invite people into a conversation that has redeeming quality to it. We can do church in a way that helps other people to know that you're with us and you're for us. As we close out today, guys, I just want to invite you to stand up, and I've invited the worship team back up here to sing. We're going to sing this song one more time. There is someone who's in the fire with us. There is someone who walks with us. There is someone who is closer than a brother, who can help you, who stands ready to jump in with you. You just have to invite him in. So let's take this moment and close out in worship together. Would you stand with me?